So it's 2023 now, and Sony over the years would go on to buy Funimation and Crunchyroll. Last year in March, they announced that Funimation would be transferring all their content over to Crunchyroll, and they suggested that you cancel your Funimation account immediately and start a new Crunchyroll account. Well, personally, I don't have an account for either of those, but if I did, I'd say I'd, go with Funimation, and and unlike everybody else, I personally would probably stay with Funimation until they've transferred all of their content completely onto Crunchyroll and their streaming service completely shut down. On top of that, some people would go on to voice concerns about uncensored and, uncut versions of Funimation's copies not being available or accessible on Crunchyroll, and that only the cut and censored versions would only be available on there.
All the streaming content that's on Funimation's platform has to move to Crunchyroll. And the unfortunate thing that we were seeing that I covered in my last video is a lot of that content, even though they had options for both uncut and cut, meaning censored or uncensored, the censored version were coming over, but not the uncensored version. So it was creating a lot of controversy. It was a lot of fears. This is not just naughty stuff. We're talking violence as well. Violence was getting censored. So you had things like Akudama Drive. They were getting the censored version, so the violence was censored. And yes, technically all the nudity and stuff from things like Seven Mortal Sins and stuff was censored as well. There was no happy ending to that video. I was very upset at the idea, and I didn't know why. There was no answers. Obviously, Crunchyroll's not answering why they're only moving the censored stuff, and it was creating a lot of controversy.
Well, it's freaking August 14th at this point, and no such animal has materialized. Funimation is still in existence. Their Funimation streaming service is still up and running. You can still subscribe to it, and Crunchyroll is still existing, and there are still titles on the Funimation service that you cannot get on Crunchyroll. At this point, I am literally looking at possibly restarting my Funimation subscription, because there are just certain titles that I cannot get on my current Crunchyroll subscription. And being that it has been this many months now, I mean, how many months has it been? So it's been April, May, June, July, August. So it has been 5 months since the announcement, and yet it seems almost that no progress has been made. In addition, a lot of the progress that has been made in moving some of these titles over has been that the censored versions of certain series have been brought over to Crunchyroll, and instead of the actual uncensored, uncut versions that were on Funimation. And it's kind of getting irritating, because I don't know if this is a trend or not, but in the last few years, Sony as a company has been seemingly big into censorship. In particular, I'm referring to what they've been doing on the PlayStation side of things, especially when it comes to Japanese games, which is really concerning and almost, I hate to use it, but it's a little racist. And what I'm talking about is, if you're talking about a game like Devil May Cry, for instance, or any Japanese game that you could think of, well, the Nintendo versions of these games on the Switch, of all places, were being put out uncensored, whereas the PlayStation versions were being censored. Meanwhile, a game like The Last of Us 2 has a scene, rather gratuitous sex scene with everybody's favorite murder Hulk. Oh God, what's that dumb broad's name? Abby. And it's uncensored, it's uncut, and it happens right in front of the player, and no censorship of any kind has taken place. So we see with a Western developed game, especially one that was first party, all good. But with a game that comes out from Japan, which is weird since Sony's a Japanese company, censorship. And now we're seeing it in their anime division when it comes to Funimation and Crunchyroll, where now they're deciding that they want to censor certain material, or at least that's how it seems from the service. Now, I don't know if, as the merger goes through, we're going to see more of the uncensored content coming over, but as of right now, it doesn't seem like the focus is on the content that the customers, the paying customers, such as myself, want to see. And what's really weird about it is there's not been an end date put in. Like, the customers that are paying for these services have no idea what's going on. We just get little tidbits of information, we go along with it, and like I say, now we are 5 months in and very little has changed, and it's just super annoying.
So I've tried to find as many up-to-date videos as possible expressing this concern, and so far the only up-to-date one that I have found expressing this was 8-Bit Heroes here. And he might be onto something here about, restarting his Funimation account and everything, because if it's really going to take this long to transfer Funimation's uncensored copies or other dubs and everything over to Crunchyroll, then I'm just going to stick with Funimation. Or this guy here from Otaku Spirit who tried to email Crunchyroll about what's going on.
At some point, I got an email. It was a press release, and Crunchyroll was telling everybody in this email, hey, look at the new lineup of releases that are coming over from Funimation. Be excited. And I looked at that list, and I'm like, okay, there's a couple things in there that I'm going to look at to see if it's the real version or if it's the censored version. And I thought, hey, why not? Why not reply to it? What could hurt? The worst thing that could happen is they don't respond to me. Well, I was actually surprised that they actually responded. My response was, do you have any word on when or if Crunchyroll will be moving the uncensored content from Funimation? I noticed that most of all versions moved over already have been censored. Akudama Drive, My Girlfriend is a Gal, Azure Lane, Seven Mortal Sins, etc. If they will be moving this content over, how will they be handling it on the site? Obviously, the question there being, they don't have selections in the player, it's all separate seasons. And like I said, I got a response, and I was very shocked when I seen this email. It says, hi Andrew, we'll investigate and report back. Crunchyroll subscribers over 18 can peruse mature gated content for a variety of series, but we'll look into the status on the titles you mentioned below. Sadly, shocked to nobody, never got a follow-up. Now, I did try to contact them again to give a follow-up, and again, no response, to a shock to nobody. My assumption here is that whoever is sending out this stuff is part of the PR team and they have zero control over what gets moved and zero control over the decision making there. They probably went to them and said, hey, this guy is asking about why the uncensored stuff's not moved, and they said, we're not doing that, don't reply to it. And that was probably the end of it.
Yeah, no response. And when Crunchyroll doesn't respond with a potential date of Funimation's uncensored copy or some of Funimation's dubs transfer over to Crunchy's streaming site, it leaves some more stress, confusion, and frustration. And whoever told them not to respond and just leave it at that, I may not know what's going on myself as much either, but my guess is, it's likely because, another executive comes in and they have a different vision. They might have a different idea about what to do with this merge instead of giving the paying customers what they want. And like I said before, if I was in with the rest of the community, I personally would have just stuck with Funimation until all of their content has been completely moved to Crunchyroll, and then Funimation's streaming sites completely goes away. Some people will say, oh, it'll happen eventually, just be patient, but this is what's frustrating and confusing sometimes, because they don't know when it's actually going to happen, hence why I personally would just stick with Funimation. Now it's been roughly 10 months since this merge happened, and as far as I know, nothing else has changed. Even Funimation's streaming site is still there, and you can still watch certain dubs and other kinds of content on there that are still not on Crunchyroll. So going back to that YouTuber, 8-Bit Heroes, I believe. So aside from his video being the most up-to-date video about expressing concerns about this Funimation and Crunchyroll merge likely failing anime fans, let's take a look at some of the comments down below in the video. I totally agree, it's December now, and there are still issues. I'm kinda pissed off about this. I'm still subscribed to both, and it's expensive as hell. Especially with both services jacking the price. My Crunchyroll subscription just increased this month to $12.99 from $9.99 a month with no warning. I guess I should have went annual with them too. Some series like Star Blazers, they only transfer the first season. Other shows, they only move the sub version, no English dub. And like you mentioned, only very few series have the mature version. Crunchy's version of Funny's uncut copy, and some shows weren't transferred at all. So you still have to use Funimation if you want to watch them. I know there's issues with Funimation's English revisions, but I seem to miss action content happening on the screen while reading the subs, so I like to watch both versions. And that's why I originally chose Funny over Crunchyroll years ago. But now, if you want new anime content, you need Crunchyroll, but for full versions of older anime, you need Funimation. It's another money grab that always happens when you have these kind of massive mergers, leaving one company with virtually a monopoly over an industry. So yeah, I'm pissed off and not sure of what to do about this. Which 8-Bit Heroes responds with, you might have to bombard them on Twitter or cancel both subscriptions in mass to send a message since it's going on a year now. And that finishes with, yeah, I was thinking the same thing, especially with there being other free, gray to non-complaint anime website options. I've really tried to avoid those options in the past because the harm it causes to the anime industry as a whole, which is magnified in North American market because only paid subscriptions help pay for licensing and airing of those new or old anime here in our global region, which is why I originally supported those paid subscriptions. But unfortunately, the only way to make large companies like Sony start to listen is when their profit margins start to drop. I'm not sure if there are really enough people that would cancel their subscriptions to actually impact the anime division of Sony, though. That actually does sound pretty accurate, because the best way to tell Sony and Crunchyroll that you don't like what they're doing is to simply just cancel your Crunchyroll account. Maybe restarting your Funimation account, I guess that could be beneficial, but I'm not really 100% sure about that because I'm not an expert on how this works, but I'm just here to share some people's thoughts about what's going on here, and I would like to know what your thoughts are. Let's take a look at some other comments. On top of all that, excuse me for my language, bullshit, I just got an email from Funimation only 2 hours ago saying that they will be raising their price from $7.99 to $9.99, and I am absolutely livid right now. How can they possibly justify this when they don't even release new anime on that site anymore? It's time for a revolution against this stupid company who continues to try to take advantage of its customers. That's crazy. They know both libraries should have been combined by now. I feel like Sony is dragging their feet to get every dime they can get, shaking my head. Yeah, I think it's both that, and they're trying to force the loyal Funimation subscribers to abandon it by raising the price and going over to Crunchyroll. I don't care how high they raise it, because I ain't leaving, and I will never get Crunchyroll. I hope if enough people stay strong and united on the matter, eventually, we will force them to bring Funimation back to its former glory, or maybe even better than it was before. Okay. That's the end of the second conversation there. Ooh, here's one here by Bruce Wayne. I haven't cancelled my Funimation yet either. No Claymore or Moonface. 8-Bit Hero says this transfer's taking forever. And now, Kurisu? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Says same here. I will never abandon Funimation. Now Anonymous Taylor says here, I have both services. Funimation is light years more functional. Shaking my head. May just cancel both. And 8-Bit Heroes responds, perhaps that's the message they need to get in order to do right by the customers. And now Nameless says here, I restarted Funimation because no One Piece dub on Crunchyroll. 8-Bit Hero says, had to keep mine as well, which means he probably could have restarted his Funimation account. So my conclusion is, anyone from Crunchyroll or who is a Crunchyroll supporter who wants to tell me, eventually Crunchyroll eventually will transfer other Funimation dubs or uncut copies over there. Anyone who tells me that eventually they will isn't really gonna help me help assure me much, because in the end I personally would probably just either stick with Funimation or restart my Funimation account if I had one there. And since this transfer is taking really that long, I think I might as well consider just start a Funimation account myself. But what do you guys think? How are you feeling about this transfer? How are you guys feeling about this merge so far? Is it time for revolution? Do you want to restore Funimation back to its former glory? You still want to continue supporting Funimation dubs and maybe some of their uncensored content? Just cancel your Funimation account. I'm in editing mode right now. I meant to say cancel your Crunchyroll account. That's really all it takes. 'Cause money is the only thing that these is the only thing that matters to these executives. They can throw out something that the paying customers and fans don't like, and as long as it makes money, they don't care what we say because it's just gonna keep making money, and they're just gonna keep doing that. And the only way to truly make Crunchyroll and Sony listen is to just delete your whole Crunchyroll account and cancel your payment with them. That's all it takes. So until then, I'm not creating a Crunchyroll account at all until Funimation transfers all of their content right onto Crunchyroll and ends their whole streaming service. So what do you guys think? Now, I don't know how many people there are that have canceled their Crunchyroll subscriptions in favor of maybe restarting their Funimation accounts, or just at least just telling them that they don't like what they're doing. But I just thought I'd make this video to pass on what I've seen so far, and I'd like to know what some of your guys' thoughts are on all this are. Let me know in the comments section down below, and I'll see you in another video. Bye. Next time on this channel, Crunchyroll underpays VAs and translators, refuses to cooperate. Reupload. It's another re-upload of another video I once made.